Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I'm the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith. We hope that you enjoy our service today.
Good morning, Madison Avenue Baptist Church. This is Jenny Lindsay, your soprano, coming at you from upper Manhattan. I hope you enjoy the service. Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be give my love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed.
Good morning. It is such a pleasure for me to be back here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church preaching as though I'm right there with you as I have been before. I am honored to be with you. My life has been a deeply meaningful and exciting adventure. I've worked for humanitarian agencies all over the world in some of the most difficult regions, and I've enjoyed every step of that journey. I was able to seize life's opportunities with my whole heart and my mind. But now I've embarked on a new journey. I'm faced with a personal health issue, a rare, usually fatal syndrome called paraneoplastic syndrome. I am challenged. I am disabled. However, I know I'm not just my diagnosis. I am a person of worth. So I choose still to live life to the fullest in spite of my challenges. As Helen Keller once said, life is a daring adventure or it is nothing at all. I'd like to begin today with a question. What do these words have in common? Deafness, brain trauma injury, COVID-19, blindness, attention deficit disorder, speech difficulties, post-traumatic stress, dementia, paraneoplastic syndrome, all types of disabilities. Let's consider a few more questions. What do you feel when you meet a person who you think is disabled? Now be honest with yourself. Do you feel pity when you see someone who can't walk, who's stumbling, or who can't talk or see, or who has lost the ability to communicate? Or are you thankful that you are not disabled and that you don't have a physical or mental problem? Maybe you feel angry. Why would a loving God allow so much suffering to people? Perhaps you feel a bit guilty. Maybe you know people with special needs and you try to avoid them because they make you feel uncomfortable or you don't know how to respond to them. We have many feelings about disabilities. Regrettably, as we get older, disabilities have a way of creeping up on us, preventing us from doing things that we used to do easily. Even if we are able-bodied today, a disability will likely happen to us as part of our lives. And we may feel betrayed by our body with chronic illness. Because of the miracles of modern medicine, we now live a lot longer. And that means we have more chances to be disabled. A few facts. Almost 43 million American adults have some type of disability. More than 50% of people who are over 65 have some level of disability. And 70 million Americans, adults, have chronic pain, and nearly 5 million live with the effects of stroke. Sometimes when people are unable to do what they did before, they might see little purpose in life and they feel sorry for themselves. If they aren't living what they think is a productive life, questions come up like, why? Why has God allowed this to happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? And what can I do now? So how can all of us, all of us, begin to understand what it means to be a disabled person? I'm going to share a few thoughts and some of my own experiences with you as someone who has recently become disabled. For 35 years, I traveled around the world developing programs for organizations like the United Nations, the Ford Foundation, Save the Children. After those meaningful and exciting years, I went to seminary. And then for 15 years, I traveled around the United States and Europe as a preacher, a speaker, a retreat and workshop leader, and I thrived in this work. You may remember when I was in your church preaching and leading workshops, and I was walking normally. Then my world changed. In 2013, I traveled to Greece to be with a friend of mine, and we often walked down to the sea, to a lovely beach to enjoy the water. But when I swam, my legs felt heavy, and I could hardly get out of the sea. And struggling up the hills, I knew something wasn't quite right, but I was a fit and healthy person, so I was sure nothing serious could be wrong with me. I imagined it was the heat, or maybe exhaustion. I was in denial completely. Back in New York City, I started falling everywhere, in the subways, on the streets, in my bathtub. I couldn't stop falling. Finally, one foot wouldn't move in front of the other. And when I went to Roosevelt Hospital to the emergency room, they admitted me and they ran all kinds of tests on me. And as the weeks passed in that hospital, I lost 30 pounds and I was like a skeleton of bones just being pushed around in a wheelchair, unable to get out of bed, to dress myself, to go to the bathroom, to work. My life, my world were completely out of kilter. My doctors tried hard to keep me alive, and yet I was slipping away. I was dying without a diagnosis. One day, my neurologist said, "Joy, I don't want you to die because you love life too much." I know. God bless her. She sent my spinal fluid and my blood to all the good research laboratories in the United States. And finally, the diagnosis came back from Mayo Clinic, a rare fatal syndrome called paraneoplastic syndrome, triggered by my own immune system responding to cancer that I didn't know I had. My overactive antibodies were trying to kill the cancer cells, but they were destroying my central nervous system, and they were damaging the connection between my legs and my brain. And so, although my body was trying to do the right thing for me, it was killing me. I still remember the horrible shock that I felt as the doctor told me that I had this diagnosis, that it was uncurable and perhaps fatal, and that I would be disabled. I was devastated. I struggled to try to hear what the doctor was really saying to me. In just a few minutes, how I viewed the world, how I saw my future life, how I would live had changed. And I was overwhelmed with grief and despair. Now, most of us hope we will never be disabled, or that we won't have a child that isn't completely normal with 10 fingers and 10 toes, and that our parents will grow old gracefully, and that we too will grow old and live out our golden years. We expect that. We believe that we won't be stolen from something like that. So when MS begins to wither muscles, or Alzheimer takes away the brain, or macular degeneration kills off their vision in our eyes, and it feels like all sound is turned off and we can't hear anyone anymore, well, or if we are unable to walk, well, we don't think that's normal behavior. And so we think of anyone who has any of these problems as not quite normal. We tend to focus on the negative features of their diagnosis rather than seeing the person for who they really are as valuable. And the way we view someone is the way we treat them. Unfortunately, unanticipated disabilities can easily make people captives of anger and self-pity and depression. I have to admit, I wasn't always aware of what was going on with me, my fears, my sadness, my losses that I experienced. I admit that. However, I couldn't walk. I couldn't care for myself. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't live in my own home. I couldn't travel. I couldn't drive my car. It was humiliating. It was painful. It wasn't long before I learned firsthand that people with disabilities, physical, mental, emotional, whatever, are often discriminated against, stigmatized, shunned. As a disabled person, it's a hard lesson to learn. Yes, I felt people tried to avoid me, flood me with extreme kindness and helpfulness to the extent that I did feel helpless, and unintentionally hurt me with unkind and brutal words. People have said, "Joy, you can't go. You couldn't walk up the stairs." Wrong. Never, ever tell a disabled person what they can or cannot do. One of my extremely brilliant friends is a severely handicapped, has a severely learning disability. I don't want to use the word handicap, trust me. He looks completely normal. He talks about the nightmare it was as he was growing up, and he was called a dummy, stupid. Why aren't you trying? You don't even care. It took years of therapy for him to begin to feel like a worthy human being. Jose Feliciano, whom we know when he sings Feliz Navidad, is blind. And he talks about how his father would not let him go to the movies because he couldn't see. His father never imagined that Jose would come out to be a very good and gifted musician. We now know there's some incredible people with severe disabilities who have done incredible and amazing things. You know, you've heard about the woman who was attacked by a shark, lost one of her arms, and is one of the best surfers around. Or you've heard about the man who has no arms and he's one of the best archers. Go figure. Or there's a man who's blind who races bicycles in the mountains and he's a champion. So that's interesting. So children, compassionate children of God, how should all of us treat people who are disabled? Jerome Bars, who is a professor of Christian studies and contemporary culture, wrote these words. Scripture calls us to recognize that everyone we meet is made in the image of God. And that means they're glorious. So our first response is to see their glory and dignity as a person in God's own image, and to treasure all the things that are good and admirable about that person. Like the parable of the Good Samaritan that Heather just read, we should not avoid nor walk around the disabled as though they don't exist. We need to reach out to them with compassion and understanding like Jesus would. As followers of Jesus the Christ, we are called to respect all people, regardless of their physical or their mental ability. We need to view disabled people as God's people who have the right and the capability of fully engaging in life. And we must not prejudge or treat them as though something is wrong with them. In the creation story in Genesis, we are told God created people in God's own image and said it was good. So as people, we're one of God's greatest creations, and we are intended to embody God's likeness, no matter who or what or how we are. And since most of us, trust me, will be disabled at some time or another in our life, how can we prepare to live with that possibility? I'm going to share just a couple of experiences, insights that have helped me walk through this journey. The difficulty of being disabled can easily make us afraid, skeptical, angry, or full of self-pity. However, we can choose to try to change that picture. It's not easy. Trust me, it's not easy when we are faced with anguish and despair, which we are when we become disabled. Nevertheless, even in terrible times, we may discover inside of us somewhere, there are some surprising gifts that are buried somewhere in our lives. Compassion, the desire to serve, hope, wisdom, courage, faith. And from my own experience, I now understand that significant growth can come from being disabled. What I find the most surprising is that my disability has helped me to learn what I am made of. It has forced me to face my own fears, my losses, and to discover that I have strengths and capabilities that I didn't even know I had, and to appreciate other people's kindness and help to me. I began to pay full attention to what was going on in my life, what was important, what was valuable. Being disabled has helped me come to a deeper understanding of life itself. I can no longer escape into the future or try to live in my past. Without a doubt, my disability has taught me to be grateful for the gift of life. And I have discovered one simple truth. We might not be able to be healed or cured, yet we can choose how we respond to our challenges, no matter how difficult they are. Yes, I am limited. I am disability. I am a disabled person. I am unable to walk. Still, after grieving and mourning my losses, I have learned what skills and strengths really are for me. Somehow, hope has interrupted my despair. So I shall continue to work fully into living into this new life of mine. I now know I'm not a diagnosis. I am not an illness. I am a child of God who has a lot to contribute to the world. Amen.
Good morning, Madison Avenue Baptist Church. It's Brian, the baritone, here in Long Island City. Now, this next hymn, I know, is a favorite of a lot of you, so please, wherever you are, sing out and join me on hymn number 452, Here I Am, Lord. I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in deepest sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright, who will bear my light to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them. They turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them. My hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.